So, Tony, agentic AI is the word that we have been hearing a lot these days, especially in the last 2 months period. And being at CrewAI, you are the best person to talk to because you are at the center of all the action which is happening in this space of agentic AI. So my first question to you is, why is everyone talking about agentic AI these days, and what makes it such a game changer for businesses using large language models?
Yes, yeah, it goes without saying, of course, right? I think this year has been labeled the year of agents, or the year that actually agents work. I think it's worked before this year, but yeah, so I think it's very important that agents are kind of taking the center stage right now, because when we're talking about like transition to AGI, I think that the intermediate step there is agents. Agents actually doing most of the stuff and making the LLMs more powerful. So what I personally see kind of being a game changer for businesses really using AI agents right now is really efficiency and scalability for their workflows. And workflows, I think specifically that were very slow or very mundane and very, things like, for example, like copywriting, for example, or things that just takes a lot of time to do. I think that's where the AI agents shine right now, is actually automating most of that out of the way and helping businesses grow faster and more efficient, while also saving time and resources as well. I think that's where I see a lot of effort going into it.
Any suggestions from your side that if you for the enterprises or the business, that how do you look for these agentic AI use cases? You talked about efficiency and workflows being the two keywords.
Yeah. Well, I get that question almost every day. Like, okay, like what really cool use cases are you seeing people like building or enterprises building for? I think it's a very important question. And I think that's where it should start. If you're an enterprise and you're thinking about using AI agents, I know the first question is, okay, where do I even start, right? I think the first thing is look internally, look at what processes that your organization is actually doing currently that are either taking up a lot of time, taking up resources, or mundane work that your employees don't like doing that could like really be automated. I think start looking at that and start automating those efficiency sides. But to just kind of give the viewers and listeners as well, like a glimpse of what other companies are really seeing, or where we're seeing a lot of people doing a bunch of innovation. I think the big one is really support use cases. And this could be things like triaging tickets as they come in. This is a ticket that an agent could solve. Maybe there's an agent that has been given the entire knowledge base of your documentation or your enterprise offering, just really some knowledge base based on your company. Maybe one manager agent could get that ticket, for example, coming from something like Zendesk, for example, and it looks at it and thinks, okay, this is something that this agent could resolve. It sends it to that agent finds the correct context of the answer and answers the customer. And if it finds that this is a really like a good question that I haven't seen on a knowledge base, is a new question that a user is asking, then it could transfer that to a real human support agent that can actually tackle that based on how the best practices and current knowledge that the agent that doesn't have. So I think figuring out efficiencies like that and trying to use agents for that to help with that. I think that, for example, that really short example right there, that could help a lot of like the human agents free up some of their time to do other things or focus on high-end tickets, and then let the regular ones that they usually answer, and they're like, oh, there's a template for that. Let the agent do the templating. You do the actual hard stuff. Yep.
So you talked about Zendesk being one of the business applications that enterprises are currently using, and support use case being one, which is, I think, it is something that is across the domains or industries. But any other business applications that you see, like CRM or ERP kind of applications that people are building the agents on top of these, and any particular industry, if we say that healthcare, for example, or any other industry like retail, where you see industry use cases that excite you the most?
Yes, so I think the example that I used was Zendesk. That's really, I mean, there's so many other support. I think that's just what came to mind at the moment, but there's so many other support kind of enterprises really that help with support tickets. What I see personally as some of the industries that are adopting, and I know you mentioned healthcare, but I think customer service automation, that's like number one up there. There's also like programming on the coding side. Agents can actually, for example, recently we did our founder, Joao, did a course with Andrew Ang, and we featured PwC, the PricewaterhouseCoopers consulting company. And they're using CrewAI under the hood, and they've seen about 70% improvement in accuracy on code development from using our agents compared to like previously where the numbers were pretty low. So that's like a simple example of it. Other things that we're seeing as well is like back office automation. And this could be anything from financial services to insurance companies, for example. And back office, this is usually involve the mundane stuff that we talked about. There's the customer service, there's like building out workflows that maybe requires research, for example. So like financial service firm, maybe they need to do some research report, generate research reports, do some analysis, and then decide, which investment they want to do. So that's somewhere I'm seeing some development there. So there's also e-commerce, retail, and even up to oil and gas companies, manufacturing, industrials as well. One thing that I would say though, with highly regulated fields like healthcare and financial services, and even the military, is the regulations really really stall a little bit the use of AI in general, really,
Right.
because you're dealing with very sensitive data. For example, healthcare, there's like HIPAA laws, and this is really to protect the identity of the patients, and also just this is really personal information. So I think using AI in those specific field is really hard, other than using it in a siloed environment and not really using real patient data, first of all, to begin with. So like playgrounds. But I think eventually these are things I foresee in future getting solved, or as AI gets better. And it goes back down to LLMs for me. If I think about agents, if somebody mentioned agents getting better, I think of LLMs getting better first, because at the end of the day, the brain of the agent is the LLM to begin with. So if the LLM is not good, then the agent is not good. So however much you try to squeeze out of it, there's definitely some techniques, but I think the underlying LLM is the best place to start. And I think we're seeing a lot of this recently, even with DeepSeek, it releasing the open source model that is really, really good, rivaling O1 or almost at par with O1. And I think as the models get better, and this is something that we expect, the agents will also get better in that sense.
Right. So you talked about the LLMs and the agents in one go, and how they are getting better. So this comes out to our next question: that why do we need specific frameworks for agentic AI workflows? You can always simplify the LLM integrations compared to the traditional methods, or how the frameworks they play the role along with the LLMs.
Yes, there's a lot of questions, right? I think what I hear sometimes is, why do I need a framework? I can just build this out myself, right? Yeah, you can definitely build it out for yourself. If you know what you're doing, you can build it out yourself, match your use case 100%. Yeah, so I think the agentic frameworks are really here to provide a structured way to manage complexity. And by this, I mean orchestrating things like LLMs, APIs, databases, or vector databases in this case. So all the primitives that form an agent. So this could be tools, of course, there's memory as well, and even tasks that the agent needs to do. If you don't have this framework, then you have to build all of these things by yourself. And sometimes you might not even know what exactly you need. Some people might know exactly what they need out of an agentic framework, and they might just decide to build one that kind of really suits their need directly and build that out, which is also great. But I think at the end of the day, you're one person. If you end up leaving that company or move on from that project, who's going to maintain that project? You need a framework that it's always maintainable. And another really important factor is, if it's open source, then everybody can inspect it and make sure that it's actually good and it's not a nefarious kind of platform that folks can use. But I think offering the abstraction that really simplifies the integration of all these diverse components, such as embedding models, retrieval systems, and even execution tools, I think that's the importance of having all these frameworks, and like CrewAI in this example. But if you compare with like traditional methods, these frameworks really, it reduces the development time and also lowers barrier to entry for non-experts, and also ensures scalability as well.
Right. I think scalability and that entry barrier that you talked about, along with integration, I think these three are the key points that why do you really need frameworks. So this now coming to the next question that we had is the agents, they have different components and memory is one of the components of the agents. So how is memory a crucial part in agentic AI? Since LLMs lack memory, how do frameworks help bridge this gap, and what is the difference in agentic RAG versus a naive RAG system or a simple RAG system that you want to build?
Yes, I'll start with kind of why memory first, I think. And you've mentioned a little bit on this. So LLMs kind of inherently lack the persistent memory by itself. And I think when you're using an agent and think of an agent as a person really that works at a specific company. So you can have engineers within an engineering department, you have software engineers, you have data engineers, you have data scientists. All these people need to have memory of what they're doing on their workflows day to day. And that way they're able to pass context between different teams. Hey, I'm working on this and this is not working. I've tried this and that. And it's documented so they know, what we've tried, what we've not tried. Let's move forward from that. So I think with agents, memory is very essential. And especially for continuity in workflows, as they keep working, they get better and they don't do the same mistakes. And also I think, the frameworks really, like CrewAI, for example, having memory embedded within it, it bridges the gap, between implementing the memory modules, that store this information and retrieve the information dynamically without having to worry about those aspects of it. But I think when we go to difference between agentic RAG, which you mentioned, and naive RAG, which is just regular vanilla RAG that we're used to, I think with agentic RAG, it goes beyond the static retrieval of documents. So with the naive RAG, it's very static. You just ask it and specific question, it just does that specifically. But I think with agents being brought into the picture, then you get dynamic retrieval updates and even integration of data throughout the agent's lifecycle. So if you have some new data coming in, the agent could automatically create vector embeddings of that, store that. And also for retrieval, it could use different sources to enrich the data and even use the internet to kind of add context to the data that you've already saved within your vector database. The other thing also, it really allows for adaptive planning and decision making, and this is really on-the-fly adaptation. And this is what I mentioned with kind of being able to query the internet as well. And this is it goes beyond what I mentioned in terms of like the static querying data that's already kind of just sitting somewhere with the naive RAG. And so this kind of makes agentic RAG really ideal for real-time data situations and also complex scenarios where information is constantly evolving.
Right. So that's like the difference where we see between the agentic RAG and the naive RAG system. So now coming to the next question, that when businesses are trying to implement agentic AI, so how should businesses approach selecting the right tools and frameworks? There are a bunch of frameworks and tools being out there, and we always have had these architectural patterns when we want to implement some use cases. So are there any recommended prototypes or patterns which businesses should be considering?
Yeah, I think that's a very important aspect to consider, especially right now that everybody is really trying agentic frameworks, and most of them are sometimes even trying to build their own agentic workflows internally. I think the important thing here is really experimenting and prototyping, like you've mentioned, but it starts with a use case, a pain point within your organization that you're trying to solve. So once you identify that pain point, I would love to have an agent do the research for me and generate reports without me having to scour the internet and generate these reports myself. That's just an example. And that could be automated or enhanced by AI agents. I think once you figure out a potential use case, then the next step is really to evaluate some of the tools and frameworks that are out there. And you can use rule-based, for example, ease of integration, for example, right? Can this framework connect with existing systems and data sources that you have that you want to use the agentic workflow for? Another thing is also scalability, and that's very important for enterprises. Will it handle increased data or just user demands in general? And Also, customizability is really important. Can you allow different domain customizations that you want to configure? Maybe you're in farming, for example, or healthcare. How does the platform or the framework conform to what you're trying to build? Can you customize it to your specific field? And I think something like CrewAI is really important because it's more of a horizontal platform, so you can build anything on top of it. And I like to think that of a house. So a house as a foundation. It could be a 2-story house. It could be a 50-story house. It's really depending on what you want to build on top. And then there's, and that's what CrewAI provides. You can build anything on top of it. But then there's other companies out there that are building AI agents that are very vertical. You can just say AI agents for finance, and they're very strict for finance. You can't really do anything other than finance, which is still okay. They're very niche down. But I think that's something also to consider if you're an organization trying to implement AI agents, if that's the strategy you're trying to go for. The other thing too that is very important that maybe could be overlooked sometimes is support. Can you get support from that framework, from the builders?
Right.
If you ask a question, are you able to get feedback? Are you able to get help trying to troubleshoot what you're trying to play with in the prototype stage, even during deployment as well? The other thing is the speed of development. Are they catching up to the new developments? Are they cutting out new versions every other week or every other time? I think that's also very important, because if you move fast, that means if you're using a framework that moves really fast, then you potentially will be experimenting with the cutting edge new techniques that come out, because they will be trying to implement that within the framework. So that's very important as well. But going back to your question on architecture partners, I think that's also very important. I think one thing to consider is if you can find a modular design, I think that's always important. And I think at CrewAI, we do pride ourselves in that. You have a modular design where we have different components structured separately. For example, we have a way to define agents and tasks in YAML files separately. And also you have tools separately. You have everything really modularized where you know where everything is. And I think a good example for that is in an organization, you have maybe people in marketing or sales or support. They're not technical, but they want to contribute to the building of that agent because they understand the problem. They're the ones that deal with it daily. For example, support, they're the ones that get the calls every day and they know where the frustration is. So if they can contribute to that without just saying, they can actually type. I think that's very important. So for example, at CrewAI, we've abstracted the tasks and agents into YAML files, which reads just like English, really. So anybody that's not even technical can read it and edit. They're just prompts. So they can go there and contribute with fine-tuning the prompt to figure out exactly how they want that to be solved, because they are the ones that embrace the pain point. And I think that's very important. So I think considering a very modular framework when you're thinking about this, I think that's very important because it does provide you with flexibility in that aspect and scalability as well.
Correct. So going back to that horizontal versus vertical example which you said, so when you are, so that I think I guess it also tied up to the use case that you are trying to do. And let's take an example. For example, let's take a finance use case. And you have to make a choice between you are looking for a horizontal versus a vertical kind of a framework. So in this case, is integration something more that you need to give value to, because sometimes the vertical agents may have better integrations with the financial systems, or is there that you need to give more weightage to the modular part of things, modularity, if the horizontal framework has more modularity, or the support. So I'm just trying to understand that if there is a finance related vertical use case, but there is a good horizontal framework, then how do you give weightage to these criteria?
Yeah, that's a very important question. I think the way I like to think of it is, if you try to find the tool that solves your problem, and that's the main goal of the business. You don't try to overcomplicate things. And at the same time, you don't want to sometimes build some of this, especially if you don't have the expertise internally. It's better buying rather than building internally, because you just end up spending a lot of engineering resources on something that you cannot upkeep eventually. It will just fall to the wayside. So being able to find a solution that solves your problem, be it a vertical agent framework, for example, if it's a vertical one that really relies on finance and it has the flexibility for you to be able to customize specific aspects of it, and also they're really good on support, then hey, that could be your solution. But I think there's power in having a horizontal platform, because maybe the vertical platform is very rigid on some of the things. They don't allow you, it's not really uh, a platform that it has maybe it's very opinionated in a sense. Like
Right.
this is how we like to do specific things, and this is how we think it should integrate with this system, that system, and maybe you're just like, I just want to have more control over how I set up this agentic workflow in my environment or in my organization. So I think an horizontal platform could help you in that case because you can play around. It's like Legos. You can play around and mix and match. Maybe connect to this other platform and then connect to this other platform and have a way to kind of get it to work the way you want. So it's more like Legos you're just building on top of, rather than having a Lego set that's been built for you and you just have to display it. So it gives you that opportunity to be able to put this Lego blocks together the way you want it. So I think it's a matter of flexibility and customizability that you want to have within it. And also, of course, support. That's very important. Am I able to get real-time support if I have issues with the platform? Can I get like resolutions faster? Because if you're running into problems, your customers are running into problems, it's going to affect your bottom line. And the other thing for that as well is how fast are these platforms evolving? So are they able to adapt to the new changes that are coming up? New models get released every time, and it comes with extra capabilities. Is that something that if it gets released today, tomorrow or the next day, will I have that capability available for me to test? So those are very important aspects of it to consider.
Right. Coming to the next one, from an implementation standpoint, I just wanted to ask you how difficult it is productionization of agentic workflows at scale. What are your views on that?
Yes, I think we're one of the early companies really to productionize AI agents at CrewAI, and I think it's or in a sense provide a way for folks to actually put their agents in production. I think the big thing there is really some of the stuff that we will probably talk about are making sure that the agent in production is reliable. I think that's the biggest important thing that a lot of people are concerned about. Is it reliable? Is it hallucinating? Like how am I able to know when it's doing the wrong thing, or how can I interject it and get it to do what I want at the same time? And I think also the other thing there is scalability. So in terms of the complexity of deployment, I think it's pretty relatively easy to do that at the moment, but monitoring it and having some quality return on investment by deploying that, I think that's the biggest aspect right now. And I think at CrewAI, we're seeing a lot of customers that are really happy about their products currently deployed on our platform. And I think this comes down to efficiency and how much benefit they're seeing from using that in production and being able to solve their problems and also improve their workflows within their organization. I think that's the important part.
Right. So so we had this another point which I wanted to ask on this production issue is that we have had these terms when we had deployments of ML models. We said it's ML ops, then AI ops, then we had LLM ops. So are we going to have the agent ops, or is there any term that you are observing that is coming up?
Yeah, we already have agent ops, but it's a company that essentially is a monitoring platform.
Right.
Shout out to them. They're really good. They provide more of like agent observability, so you can see what actually the agent is doing under the hood. How things like token consumption, which agent maybe even helping you with debugging what agents, if they have issues, what agent is doing what, so it can help you debug the process. So you'll be able to see what's going on under the hood of what the agents are doing when they're running. But I think in terms of wording, all these are semantics at the end of the day. I think it goes back down to the fundamentals. We're still doing the same thing. We're still deploying stuff in containers and putting stuff in production. So I think wording, I haven't seen any other word that kind of replaces that. But I think the workflow is pretty much almost the same in a sense of deploying agents to production. But I think the big thing here is the value that we get from that in production of these agents. I think that's a big part that at least customers are concerned about or are excited about as well, because they're like, okay, I have it in production. Now I just want to deploy it and get it to do stuff for me because it's in production. And I think that's the important part. And I think another interesting thing is that I'm seeing recently that kind of tangentially related to that is pricing. Is it more like pay per use or subscription? And I think subscription models are probably going to be fading away a little bit. It's going to come down to usage, because if I have an agent, I don't want to, maybe I don't want to pay so much for like idle time. I want to pay it for when it's doing the task and when it's completing the task, right? I want to pay for that specific aspect. So you can have an agent that does maybe one thing every day. I want to pay for when it's in use, for example. There's still a lot of debate out there in terms of what that would look like eventually, but I think that's where things are kind of gravitating towards.
Right, right. So, coming to now the integrations that you need to do in order to make the agentic workflows or agentic AI successful is when you build an agentic system, how do you handle connecting diverse data sources to agents, and what are the key considerations that you need to do around data freshness, security, scalability that businesses should keep in mind?
Yes, so I think for agents, really, the data aspect still goes back to traditional data ETL processes that were there before for data engineering, for example. I think being still able to have real-time data feeds, I think that's still important for things like financial services, healthcare, any industry really. I think real-time data is, or near real-time data is really important. But I think for agents, I like to think of them as abstracted away from the data a little bit, because you can bring the data to the agents or the agents to the data. But I think the data aspect of things in the past that we've been doing, I think that's still very relevant. For example, you could have some data streaming in, and then it has to be maybe create embeddings to that stored in the vector database, and then have the agents query that data, for example, using something like Agentic RAG. I think that's still very important. I think data freshness, of course, is still very important for specific aspects of it. And if you want to use that in your use case, if that's a use case that maybe you're trying to maybe get signals as they come out fast so you can report on them, or have agents automate a process of like, as real-time data comes in, you want that agent to process that and generate maybe some output on the other side, maybe signals for trading or even posting on socials or something like that, for example. I think the architecture of the data ingestion and transformation, unloading, I think that is still important the way it is. I don't think agents would touch any of that at the moment. There's debate, of course, because you could use AI agents to do the ETL process as well. But I think at the end of the day, the agents are still more of a tool on top of it that can interact with that data at the end of the day.
Right. So there is one part is data integration, and the other part is tools or how the systems would interact. So you had these protocols which are coming up, like Anthropic's MCP protocol that has come up where they say that okay, you run an MCP server, and there's a way your agents would interact with the system. So do you foresee that standardizations of these protocols coming in for the interactions of agents with tools and the data?
Yes, I think there's going to be standards, especially if we're thinking about, because I think that right now, you look at most of the frameworks that have been released, they really focus on the consumer, and to some extent, that's what I believe. I think the consumers are the target right now. The consumers are consuming most of the use cases of AI at the moment. I think enterprises are going to catch up real fast. It's different this time than in the previous tech cycles, really. I think it's been the companies or enterprises adopting it first and then trickling down to the regular user. But this time, it's kind of inverse. It's starting with the consumers first, and it's because of the virality and also ease of use for most folks. But I think as organizations are thinking about implementing some of this within their enterprises, I think it's going to come down to, proven tasks and also things that have been hardened a little bit more. So I think there's going to be more protocols that will come out of this. I think things, of course, like containerization or having that the MCP aspect of it being in a walled garden where it doesn't interact with, it could cause maybe side effects that you don't want that to happen. I think that's very important. Having that in a siloed, containerized environment where they run the MCP and being able to open those or run through the browser, for example, and take some actions. You want that in a siloed environment where it doesn't interact with your regular use cases and mess that up. But I think there's still a lot of challenges right now with MCP. There's things like page refreshes. How does it handle that? So there's a lot of things that needs to be ironed out. And I think I don't have a full picture right now of how that would look like for enterprises, how they would sell that. But I think we're still early days, especially in MCP aspect of it, or computer use in a sense.
Right, right. So OpenAI's operator, just got launched, and I just wanted to ask you that, do you get a chance to play with it? Did you try it out?
No, I haven't tried it out actually. I've watched a few demos of different folks trying it out. It seems very promising at the moment. Although, and I think it comes down as well to, if we look at the nitty gritty of it, is the use cases for that. There's still a lot of, I think one of the things that I saw being mentioned was, say, it still goes back to that refresh problem as well. And availability, of course, in different regions. I think that's another issue a lot of folks are complaining about. But I think overall, it's a good step forward in just bringing AI agents to the masses. So everyday users can actually see and know that, okay, this is how an agent works, and this is how I would use it, because it's not as complex as talking about code or how we do it at CrewAI at the moment. So it's kind of bringing that up to the forefront, and people can use it without even thinking about what actually is happening on the back end. How is all this orchestrated together that I just have to type on a screen and magic happens in a sense? I think it's still early days, but it's a good direction forward where we're moving with it.
Right. The reason I asked you is because every time somebody in the consumer space or the enterprise are trying to play with the agentic workflows or agentic AI, there is always this curiosity about how do we evaluate these systems, or how do we evaluate the agent-based systems. So, are there currently any effective measures which or benchmarks that you observe that, okay, these are the things that, or frameworks by which we can evaluate these systems or ensure the performance of the AI agents?
Yes, I think evals are really important, and I think we're seeing a lot of that. If you're building an agent, you better have evals, so that way you know when it's doing the right thing or not. A technique that we use at CrewAI, for example, is really task-specific metrics. So each agent, of course, has a task, and they have an objective, and then they also have expected output out of them, and those are things that you define as a user. This is what I want you to do, and also this is what I expect for you to return to me as a final output. So I think a quick and easy way for that is to use LLM as a judge. So you have another LLM judge the output of the agent. So you compare what the agent produced and the objective that you set for it, and expected output that you had initially told them, this is what I expect out of you. So you compare the output and what you expected. Does it match? Did it actually achieve that? If it didn't, then it failed, or there's a score for that, hallucination score, for example. It just needs to match that. So I think that's a really good technique to measure the output of each agent. And you can do that for each agent. That way you know which agent broke and why it broke, and be able to fine tune that and get that out of the way. The other thing also is fine tuning these agents and things using like reinforcement learning. For us, we have that in CrewAI. You can actually train the crew over time with the way you want the output to come to you. So you give it a prompt, or tell it, I want you to do this task. It runs through the task maybe in 4 iterations, and it gives you a score for each. And once it's done, it stops and asks you, what do you think about this output? And you can tell it, I don't like it. I want you to sound this way, or I wanted you to structure it this way. And over time, it's going to learn, and it's going to use that as memory to remember this is how you want your output to be. And I think that's very important. The other thing also that I think is very important is using structured output, and that's really mostly already implemented in most of the LLMs at the moment. But we have that in CrewAI, so you can set a structured output and have it output structure in a way exactly you always want, and it's very consistent. And we also introduce guardrails, which really allows you to have an extra layer of abstraction to check to make sure that it followed, basically guardrails, make sure it followed what you want it to do. If not, it kicks it back to the agent to redo that process again. So I think reinforcement learning, there's also human in the loop. I think that's always important. You can stop each agent after they finish a task. You can tell it, once you finish the task, please ask me for feedback before you pass that to the next agent. So that's very important. That way you can correct mistakes before they go downstream and get you a final output, and costing you a lot of tokens. And I think that's the important part.
Right. And my last question to you on this is, you are the developer advocate for CrewAI. So what's the top 3 things, or what's your best pitch for the developers to start using CrewAI?
Yeah, a lot of pitches, really, a lot of important things. I think for me, the big thing is the ease of using CrewAI. I don't think there's an easy framework out there other than CrewAI for you to get started with building agents. It's very easy to understand. It's not complicated at all. And our documentation are pretty great to get you started there. So if you go to docs.crewai.com, that's a really good place to start. We have an example there that you can run, and you can actually see, okay, it works. Now you can go ahead and customize that further or build anything else that you want. I think you'll be limited in terms of your thought process in terms of what use case do I want to build. The tool is there, but what do you want to build? I think that's the big thing here. And CrewAI provides you really an easy way to put your ideas into action real fast. So you can build that agent in like 4 or 5 minutes and you're done. The other thing that I would say is response. So if you have a problem, we have a really active community as well on community.crewai.com. That's a really good spot for you. So if you run into issues trying to build your agent, you can ask there. You will probably get an answer in a few minutes, or you can even find other people that have solved the same problem before. So I think that's very important. So community and the ease of getting started, I think those are very important. And once you build this agent and it works and you love it and you want to put it in production and even share with others, absolutely. We have a enterprise platform that you can deploy that agent very easily and share that with other people, or build an app that you can actually get other people to use. So that's very important as well. And we do provide a subsidized layer for developers to build on. So very important. So yeah, get started today. That's what I would say.
Nice. Thank you, Tony, for spending time with us, talking about the Agentic AI workflows, the CrewAI frameworks, the evaluation techniques, how do you go about productionizing the Agentic AI workflows. We wish you all the best in all your future endeavors and in this journey of CrewAI. Thank you very much, Tony.
Yeah, thank you, Kisan. Thank you for having me.